Subscribe before the truth disappears. The first scream sliced through the night shift at Pelican Bay State Prison at exactly 2:13 a.m. It echoed down the concrete corridor of the SHU, the security housing unit, where California locked away the state's most dangerous men. The inmates in this block didn't scream, they didn't cry, they didn't crack. So when Officer Daniel Rourke heard it, raw, panicked, and human, it was enough to make him stop mid-stride. He wasn't alone. Alarms snapped to life. Red lights washed the hallway. Metal doors slammed. Radios erupted with orders. And over all of it, another sound followed. A single word shouted from cell 178. Gone. Rourke rushed toward the voice. His boots slapped the floor, the cold fluorescent glare flickering like a failing heartbeat. When he reached the cell, he froze. Inmate Javier "Ghost" Mendez, a man serving life for orchestrating a murder-for-hire ring, was gripping the bars with white knuckles. His eyes were wide with fear, real fear, the kind no inmate ever dared show. "He's gone," he wheezed. "He was right there, and now he's gone." Rourke's flashlight beam swept the cell across the bed, the sink, the toilet, the scratched cement walls covered in years of gang-coded etchings, and landed on the empty bunk. The top bunk. It shouldn't have been empty. Prisoner 44291, Andre Keller, had vanished. No door alarms, no cut bars, no disturbance, no sign of tampering, nothing. Just gone. Rourke keyed his radio, voice tight. "Unit Bravo, we've got a missing inmate. Repeat, we have a missing—" A burst of static cut him off. Then every light in the block snapped off at once, plunging them into pitch-black silence. The entire unit exhaled as one, in the dark. For 3 long seconds, the only sound was Javier Mendez whispering into the shadows. "He told me he was leaving tonight. I thought he was messing around, but he meant it. He meant it." When the lights flicked back on, something new appeared on the concrete floor beneath the bunk. A folded sheet of paper. Prisoners weren't allowed paper, and yet this one was there. Rourke swallowed hard before bending to pick it up. The writing was small, neat, impossibly precise, like someone writing under a spotlight rather than in the half-light of a cell. It read, "Open the door." No signature, no explanation, just 3 words that felt like a command. Rourke didn't have time to process it, not yet, because supervisors were already streaming down the hallway, shouting questions, and behind them came Detective Mara Ellingson, San Francisco's prison crime specialist assigned to cold case violence behind bars. She wasn't supposed to be there, not that night, but she was. And she was staring at the note in Rourke's hand with something like recognition. "Where did he get the paper?" she asked quietly. Rourke didn't answer because another officer was shouting, "Sir, CID has a hit on the cameras!" They all followed the officer to the control room, where a bank of monitors replayed the hallway outside cell 178. At 1:13 a.m., Andre Keller was visible, standing at the bars, staring out into the hall. At 1:14, he stepped back into the shadows. At 1:15, he vanished from the frame entirely. And at 1:16, a slip of white paper slid out from under his door. "That's impossible," a guard muttered, leaning in. "He couldn't have reached the slot from inside that angle. And where'd he get paper?" Rewind, play, rewind. Another officer squinted. "It looks like the paper is already on the floor, like it was placed there before the camera caught it." Detective Ellingson didn't look away from the screen. Andre wasn't serving time for violent crimes. He was serving 6 years for financial fraud. No gang ties, no discipline issues, no escape attempts. He was due for release in 3 months. Rourke frowned. "Then why is he gone?" Ellingson turned to him with an expression that didn't match the chaos around them. She looked like someone who had expected something like this. Because Keller wasn't the first. Because she had seen this pattern before. 30 minutes earlier. In a cell 2 units away, inmate Samuel Drake, a soft-spoken former banker, sat shaking as he stared at a torn-off piece of bedsheet knotted around his wrist. He hadn't slept in days. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't talked. Not since the message. It came 3 nights ago, slid through his door in the dark like a whisper no one saw coming. "Open the door." He'd thrown the note away.
The next night, another came, then another. And then last night, the banging started. Soft at first, then louder, slow, rhythmic, like knuckles dragging across his cell door. He screamed for help until his voice went raw. By the time officers arrived, there was nothing outside his door. Only silence. But the messages continued. Drake wasn't the only one who received them, which is why when Keller disappeared from his locked cell, Ellingson knew exactly what she needed to check next. Back in the present, "Detective," an officer called from the corridor, "you need to see this." They followed him past cell 178 to cell 182. The inmate inside, a wiry man with tattooed arms, was standing with his back to them, staring at the wall. "Sir," the guard said gently, "you okay?" The man slowly turned. His knuckles were bleeding. And written in smeared red across the cell wall were the same 3 words: "Open the door." He blinked at Ellingson, confused and trembling. "He said it would stop if I did it. He said the knocking would stop." "Who said that?" she asked. The inmate swallowed. The man in the bunk." Ellingson felt her stomach drop. "There's no one else assigned to your cell." The inmate stared at her, shaking harder. "But he was right there. He told me the same thing they told Keller. He told me he was leaving tonight." Ellingson stepped closer. "What else did he say?" The inmate's voice cracked. He said, "Once the door opens, none of us get to go back." A cold sweep of dread washed down her spine, because this wasn't an escape, and it wasn't a suicide pact. This was something else, something coordinated, something calculated. The paper in Rourke's hand fluttered as Ellingson spoke. "Check every cell that's reported strange noises this week. Any inmate who claims someone else is in their bunk, someone knocking, someone whispering, I want them on a list, now." The supervisor nodded and turned to leave, but he didn't get far, because a guard ran in from the opposite end of the hall, panting like he'd sprinted the entire block. His face was pale. "Detective, you better come see this." "What is it?" He hesitated. "It's Keller." Ellingson's pulse hammered. "You found him?" The guard swallowed. "Not exactly." He held up a body cam tablet, pulled up the live feed, and pointed it toward the security door leading to the prison yard. The camera showed a single figure standing motionless at the far edge of the yard, head tilted unnaturally to the side, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. Barefoot, wearing Keller's uniform, but the skin tone, the posture, even the height, none of it matched Keller. And on the wall behind him, fresh, dripping, unmistakable, "Open the door." Ellingson stared at the screen. "Who is that?" Rourke whispered. The figure slowly turned toward the camera just enough to show a face no one recognized, a face that belonged to an inmate who had died 3 years earlier. Ellingson felt the world tilt. "Run the lockdown again," she said quietly, then louder, "now!" As the alarms blared and steel doors slammed, the guard holding the tablet whispered, "Detective, the yard door to that area, it's been locked for 8 years. There's no way he got in there." Ellingson didn't answer, because the figure on the screen was now holding something, a folded piece of paper, and as he lifted it toward the camera, the shot froze on 3 familiar words: "Open the door."
The alarms finally died sometime after 4 in the morning. By then, the yard was empty again. The body cam footage of the figure by the far wall had been replayed, slowed down, and argued over until even the officers who'd sworn they believed nothing stopped glancing over their shoulders. Detective Mara Ellingson stood in the chilled pre-dawn air of the Pelican Bay yard, breath fogging in front of her, watching crime scene techs sweep a place no one was supposed to have set foot in for 8 years. "No footprints," the lead tech muttered. "Not from tonight, anyway. Dust is undisturbed, gates welded. Cameras show him standing there, but the ground says nobody's been here in a long time." Ellingson looked at the wall. The paint was still wet. "Open the door." The red streaks glistened under the yard lights. Someone had used prison-issue mop dye, thick, industrial, nearly impossible to smuggle between units without help. She didn't believe in ghosts.
She believed in supply lines. "How many people have keys or bolt cutters to this side of the yard?" she asked. "3. Maintenance chief, security supervisor, and the warden. That's it." Rourke stood a few feet back, arms folded tight across his vest, eyes locked on the words like they might move again if he blinked. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "The cameras show a guy who's supposed to be dead, the door's sealed, no prints, no footprints. This feels wrong." Ellingson didn't answer. She stepped closer to the wall instead, ignoring the tech's caution, and leaned in. Near the last letter of door, buried under the thicker streaks of dye, she saw it. A faint set of vertical lines carved into the concrete. 3 short scratches close together. Not random, not fresh. She brushed her thumb across them. "Count marks," she murmured. "Somebody was keeping tally long before tonight." "Of what?" Rourke asked. She didn't know, but she'd seen enough of prison life to know that everything meant something to someone, even the scratches nobody else noticed. They moved the investigation to a windowless conference room off the admin wing. Concrete walls, humming vent, a table scarred by a decade of elbows and coffee stains. On the far wall, an evidence board was already forming. Keller's intake photo, a printout of the "open the door" note, grainy stills from the yard footage, and a blurry mugshot of the inmate who died 3 years ago, and a map of Pelican Bay's units pinned with red markers. Ellingson sipped burnt coffee and scrolled through her tablet. Samuel Drake, Javier Ghost Mendez, unknown inmate from cell 182. A growing list of names of men who heard knocking, saw bunkmates that didn't exist, or woke up with notes they weren't supposed to have. It wasn't random. Prison stories never were. "Detective," a young sergeant said, sliding a thin brown file across the table. "We pulled Keller's property from intake. You'll want to see this." She flipped it open. At first glance, it looked harmless. Standard paperwork, a Bible, a paperback legal guide, and a stack of letters addressed to Keller from various law firms, and a woman in Chicago who signed her name only as R. But tucked between 2 pages of the legal guide was something else. A single sheet of yellowed paper, folded with the same precise care as the note from the cell. On one side were cramped, handwritten numbers, arranged in columns. On the other, in the same small, neat writing, Rikers, San Quentin, Pelican Bay. Same rules, same banks, same doors. Ellingson frowned. "Banks?" Rourke repeated. She nodded slowly. "Prison economies," she said. "Every facility has a hustle. Stamps, ramen, cigarettes. Behind it can be tight, complex, organized. Like a real bank," Rourke said. "Like a real bank," she agreed. Keller had been a financial fraudster on the outside. Inside, he'd been sent to a place full of unregulated money, desperate men, and guards who looked the other way for a cut. Of course he'd find work. She flipped through the letters again, slower this time. Each envelope had a tiny black dot stamped in a different corner. Top left, bottom right, center, edge. Subtle enough that no one scanning for code phrases in the text wouldn't notice. But placement mattered. Code lived in the details. She turned to the last letter, postmarked from New York. Rikers Island. The handwriting was different, sharper, heavier. But the pattern of dots was the same. "Who's the sender?" Rourke asked. She read the name. M. Rhodes. Doesn't ring a bell. It did for her, because 3 months ago, a former Rikers inmate named Malik Rhodes walked into a legal clinic in Brooklyn and asked to speak to someone who handles things when the system doesn't. He'd left before she got the message, but not before he dropped an anonymous note. "I'm out now, but you need to know the doors aren't locked like you think. When they say open the door, people vanish, and nobody files a report." She'd filed it mentally as prison paranoia. Now it felt like a lead she'd ignored. By noon, Ellingson was on a secure video call with a warden in New York and a lieutenant from San Quentin. The screen was split into 3 squares, her tired face on the left, a heavy-set man in a dress shirt in the middle, and a wiry, gray-haired supervisor on the right. "Let me get this straight," the New York warden said. "You're telling me a non-violent fraud inmate disappears from a locked cell in Pelican Bay, leaves a note that says, 'Open the door,' and you think that's connected to a rumor my ex-inmate spread in a clinic 3 months ago?" "I'm not saying think. I'm saying I have names." She slid a file forward, purely for the physical reassurance of it. "At Rikers, you had 3 sudden inmate transfers in the last year. No disciplinary triggers, no paperwork trail anyone can explain. All 3 men were tied to commissaries, stores, or gambling debts. At San Quentin, you had 2 inmates moved to undisclosed special housing after reporting they were being pressured to pass notes. And now Pelican Bay has a fraudster who maybe knew where the money was hidden, and he's the one who vanishes after a pattern of unauthorized messages?" The San Quentin lieutenant stroked his jaw. "We had a rumor," he said slowly. "Guys in the SHU started talking about a door list. Names written somewhere only the right people could see. Being on it meant you were getting out early or disappearing forever, depending on who you asked." "Where was it written?" Ellingson asked. He shrugged. "No one would say." The New York warden sighed. "Every prison has ghost stories, detective. But if you're right, this isn't paranormal. This is human, and that's worse." "Exactly," Ellingson said. "Whatever open the door means, it's not about spectral prisoners walking through walls. It's about someone controlling who moves, who gets protected, and who gets erased. Across states." "Interstate," San Quentin murmured. "That means staff, or contractors, or someone with access to the system. A network, running on fear and favors." The room went quiet. "What do you need from us?" the New York warden asked at last. "Everything you got on Malik Roads, and any incident reports in the last 5 years where an inmate reported hearing knocking or seeing someone else in their cell who wasn't on the sheet, even if it's buried in mental health notes. Forward them. Today." The call ended with clipped promises and shared distrust. Rourke leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed across his vest, eyes locked on the words like they might move again if he blinked. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "You really think this is bigger than one missing inmate?" "I think," she said, "that someone figured out how to turn prison walls into a business model. You control who moves, you control the flow of contraband. Who owes what? Who disappears? Open the door might be more of an order than a threat. To who? To us. To the system." By late afternoon, Pelican Bay felt different. The usual hum of routine, shouted counts, rolling food carts, distant laughter that never quite reached joy, was wrapped in a tighter, sharper edge. Word had spread. Inmates whispered through vents and pipes, passing rumors as fast as any digital feed. In the visiting room, 3 separate mothers demanded to know why their sons had called in tears the night before, saying the doors wouldn't stop knocking. In the SHU, Samuel Drake finally agreed to talk. Ellingson sat outside his cell, a plastic chair between her and the bars, Rourke standing behind her as backup. His eyes were glassy, but he wasn't incoherent. He watched her the way men do when they're weighing whether the truth is worth another beating. "You worked in finance before prison," she said. "People trusted you with money. They trusted your numbers." He snorted softly. "Until they didn't." "Inside," she continued, "somebody else trusted you. They gave you something to keep track of. Accounts, balances, debts, right?" No denial. He looked at his hands instead. "When did you first hear the words 'open the door'?"
His throat bobbed. "The first time," he said quietly, "wasn't on paper. It was in a kite." "Passed under your door?" she asked. He shook his head. "Taped inside the spine of a Bible I borrowed from Mendez. But it wasn't for me. It was for whoever ran the ledger. I just delivered it. Delivered it to who? Drake stared at her, the calculation behind his eyes naked for once. If I say his name, he said slowly, I'll never sleep again in here. They'll move me, sure. Different unit, different state, but the doors don't stay closed for men like that. They find you. You're already not sleeping, she pointed out. You're hearing knocking that isn't there, seeing people on bunks that don't exist. You think this stops if you stay quiet? He pressed his lips together. She leaned in just enough. You're an accountant, Samuel. You know when the numbers don't add up. Keller disappears. A dead man walks on camera. Notes appear where they shouldn't. You think this is some cursed prison door? Or do you think, maybe, the people who run this little underground bank are sending a message to everyone who ever touched their books? His gaze flicked up sharply. There it was. Fear, yes, but also recognition. Why Keller? Why now? Drake took a long, thin breath. Because he saw it. The real ledger. Not the one they hide in ramen debts and cig packs. The one written where nobody checks. Where? She asked. He hesitated. In the system, he said finally. In the transfer orders, in the medical flags, in the codes that tell a computer which door to open and when. He said once you understood how the doors moved people, you understood how the money moved too. Ellingson's skin prickled. And this phrase, open the door, what does it mean exactly? Drake swallowed. It means someone higher up has decided your number's been called. Doesn't matter if you're going home early or going out in a bag. It means they're changing where you exist on paper. He looked past her toward the far wall, like he could see through to the next unit. Keller told me once, he added. He said, out there, they cook books with spreadsheets. In here, they do it with doors. Rourke shifted behind her. Who runs it? Who decides? Drake's answer was so soft she almost missed it. They call him the Warden, but he's not the one whose name is on the door. The hair on the back of Ellingson's neck lifted. Give me something real, something I can hold. Drake exhaled, beaten. In Keller's intake box, there's a Bible with a torn spine. Inside the cover, under the cardboard, there is a list of numbers. Not names, just digits. You match those to inmate IDs in 3 different states, and you'll find the ones who never made it to where the system says they went. Her heart kicked. And how do you know? She asked. Because mine used to be on it, before I started talking. 20 minutes later, they had Keller's Bible on the table in the conference room. Ellingson slid a scalpel under the cracked spine and peeled it back like old skin. Behind the cardboard, pressed flat and taped in place, was a strip of notebook paper covered in faded ink. Rows of numbers, columns marked with tiny letters. R, SQ, PB. Rikers, San Quentin, Pelican Bay. Rourke ran a finger down the list, stopping halfway. Detective, he said slowly. This number right here, PB 11384. She looked up. What about it? He swallowed. That's not an inmate. That's a staff ID. He turned the paper so she could see clearly. PB 11384. Her stomach dropped. Because she knew that number. She saw it every time she signed into the system at the front gate. It was printed on the badge clipped to the vest of the man standing right beside her. Officer Daniel Rourke. When Ellingson realized where the next message would be delivered, she was already standing in front of the door.
Rourke stared at the strip of paper like it was a verdict. His name wasn't on it, but his ID number was. PB11384. Stamped cleanly beside 3 other staff codes, each one tied to a different prison, each one connected to inmates who had vanished, been rerouted, or, according to official system logs, never existed at all. Ellingson watched the blood drain from his face. "I didn't do anything," he said quietly, voice cracking. "Detective, I swear to God, I don't know what this is." She could tell he was telling the truth. Fear gives a certain shine to a man's eyes, and Rourke was glowing with it. But fear didn't make him safe. "Someone used your credentials," she said, "maybe for transfers, maybe to authorize door controls, maybe to move inmates in the system where nobody would notice." "But I never logged into anything outside my shift," he insisted. "I don't even have that clearance." "Exactly, which makes you the perfect cover. If anything goes wrong, they blame the guard with the ID number that keeps turning up." Rourke swore under his breath and turned away. Outside, a count-clearing buzzer echoed down the hallway, a sound that meant nothing on normal days and everything on days like this. Ellingson pocketed the Bible page and stood. "We're going to the control center, right now." Rourke hesitated. "Why? What are you expecting to find?" "Not what," she said. "Who?" The control center. The room hummed with machinery and fluorescent lights. Banks of monitors showing inmate cells, hallways, yards, rows of blinking servers. 2 officers at the consoles, another at the door. Ellingson showed her badge. "Clear the room." The officers looked at each other confused. "Ma'am, we don't take that order without the warden's approval." "He's on his way," she lied. The guards rose, reluctant but obedient. Rourke locked the door behind them. Ellingson stepped straight to the command console, pulling Keller's Bible page from her pocket. "Look for any transfers, movements, or system pings tied to these ID numbers in the last 90 days, she instructed. Rourke took the list with shaking hands and typed. Lines of green text scrolled down the screen. Then, stopped. "Detective," he whispered, "you need to see this." He hit enter. 5 entries appeared. Not inmates, not staff. Devices. Specifically, door authorization terminals. Each log showed the same sequence. Unauthorized override, code accepted. PB11384. Executed at 02:16:03. The exact moment Keller disappeared. Ellingson leaned in, pulse hammering. "Someone used your ID number, but not from your account. They used it inside the system at a level Rourke could never touch, inside a hidden layer. A layer that shouldn't exist." She selected the override ID. The audit field opened. But instead of exposing a username or admin signature, the screen flashed. And a message appeared. It said, "You're late." Rourke inhaled sharply. The cursor blinked. Another line appeared. "Check the door." "What door?" Rourke whispered. Ellingson tapped the console, moving back through the logs. Not a door number, not a unit. A file. Something attached. A video clip. She double-clicked. The video. Static cleared. A stone hallway appeared. Dim, narrow, claustrophobic. Not from Pelican Bay, not from any modern facility she recognized. But she recognized the figure walking down it. Keller. Alive, or at least filmed before tonight. He looked back over his shoulder, fear tightening his face. Not the fear of running from inmates, the fear of obeying someone who didn't allow disobedience. The camera panned with him, someone else was holding it. A deep voice, distorted, spoke from behind the camera. "Say it." Keller shook his head. "Say it." Keller swallowed. "Open the door." Static cut the feed. A new clip loaded. This time a close-up of a metal door. No markings, no number, just thick industrial steel. It slid open. Inside was darkness, but Ellingson felt her chest tighten as the camera moved forward. Because inside the darkness, shapes were moving. Human shapes, not walking, scraping, shuffling. Bodies pressed against the far wall, moving like they were trying to stand but couldn't remember how. Their wrists hung limp, faces gray and hollow. Some wore prison uniforms, some wore pieces of them. A voice whispered through the speakers. Too soft to identify,
Too soft to be human. The clip ended. Rourke stepped back, shaking. Detective, what is that? She shut off the monitor. It's fake, she said. It has to be manipulated, digitally altered, a scare tactic. Rourke nodded, but he didn't believe himself, and neither did she. The warden arrived. The door to the control room banged open. The warden stepped inside, tall, built like a cornered linebacker, a face carved from stone. Detective Ellingson, he said stiffly, why am I hearing you've locked down my officers and seized my control room? She didn't flinch. Because an inmate disappeared under impossible circumstances and your system showed an override using one of your guards' ID numbers. The warden scowled. Technical error. Happens all the time. Not like this, she said. Rourke stood behind her, palms sweating. Sir, someone used my ID. He barely looked at him. Detective, you're out of line. This is my facility. You don't access my systems without authorization. Ellingson raised the Bible page. And you don't get to bury this. He froze. Not at the list, at the handwriting. A muscle twitched under his eye. You shouldn't have found that, he said. His hand slid subtly toward the radio on his belt. Ellingson stepped between him and the console. Stand down, Warden. He didn't. Instead, he tapped the radio twice, an innocuous motion except for one detail. It wasn't tuned to his officers. That wasn't a distress call. That was a signal. The building's power shut off. Total darkness swallowed the control room. Only the monitor stayed lit, powered on backup circuits. Then, doors began unlocking in the distance. One by one, metal sliding, hinges groaning. A deeper sound followed, like something heavy being dragged across concrete far below the main floors. Rourke whispered, What did you do? The warden's silhouette emerged against the dim glow of the screens. You think inmates run the underground economy? You think gangs control the doors, the banks, the transfers? I do. He leaned close. The perfect workforce. No identities, no records, no screams anyone hears. Rourke choked. You're using prisoners for more than prisoners, the warden interrupted. The monitors flickered. The shapes on the screens were now walking towards cameras, towards doors, towards units inside Pelican Bay, and the control room speakers crackled to life with a whisper. Open the door.
The warden pressed another key. A siren screamed. A final lock released. Ellingson staggered up, grabbing Rourke's arm. We move, she said. Now. The warden called after them. You can run, detective, but in this place, the doors open for me. The hallway. Ellingson and Rourke sprinted into the corridor as emergency lights flickered. Somewhere below them, something slammed into metal. Then again. Not fists, bodies, trying to force a door from the inside. A deep metallic groan echoed through the prison, one that made Ellingson's blood freeze. Rourke's voice trembled. Detective, they're coming up. No, she said. Not yet. Not us. We outrun it. We warn the towers. We shut down the block manually. A loud clang interrupted her. One tier down, another door opening. Too fast. Too many. They reached the stairwell just as the first shadow moved onto the landing below. A figure climbed slowly. Wrong posture, wrong gait, like his limbs were remembering how to work. Rourke raised his baton. Stay back. Don't engage, she snapped. He's not the threat. The system controlling him is. But it was too late. The figure lifted its head. It wasn't Keller. It wasn't anyone alive. It was an inmate declared dead 2 years earlier. Eyes unfocused, mouth slack, skin gray under the emergency lights. And around his wrist was a plastic hospital band. Pelican Bay Medical Ward. Transferred, destination unknown. Ellingson pulled Rourke up the stairs. Behind them, more figures climbed into view. 12. Not fast, not frantic, just coming,
like they'd been told to. The radio on Ellingson's belt crackled with a voice she recognized. The warden. "You wanted the truth, detective? Here it is. The system doesn't hide bodies. It repurposes them." She shut off the radio. The stairwell door burst open behind them. Another voice echoed from below. Deep, flat, unmistakably human. "Open the door." The final door. They reached level 3, the admin wing, the last secured door before the exit. Ellingson swiped her badge. Red light. Access denied. She cursed, tried again. Denied. Behind them, the stairwell thundered with slow, steady footsteps. Rourke slammed his hand against the panel. "They're coming! Detective, they're almost here!" She pulled out Keller's Bible page. Below the list of numbers, there were 3 faint letters. ADM. Admin Override. A code. Hidden in plain sight. She typed the sequence. The panel flashed green. The door clicked. She shoved Rourke through, just as a hand grabbed the edge of the door behind her. Not a living hand, but not dead. Something in between. She slammed her shoulder into the metal, forcing it shut. The hand retreated, the door sealed. Footsteps stopped outside. Rourke leaned against the wall, panting. "Detective, what happens now?" Ellingson looked through the glass panel beyond the hallway. Officers were running, alarms blaring, chaos unfolding. But it wasn't hopeless. Not yet. She pulled her phone from her pocket and dialed a number she rarely used. "FBI Interstate Corruption Task Force. This is Detective Mara Ellingson. I have evidence of coordinated criminal racketeering across 3 state prisons, human exploitation, illegal inmate transfers. I need federal lockdown authority." There was silence. Then, "Detective, we've been expecting your call." She froze. "Expecting? How long have you known?" she demanded. "A beat." "Long enough," the voice said. "And detective, whatever you saw in there, remember one thing." "What's that?" "There are more doors." The call ended. Ellingson stared at the phone. Rourke whispered, "What does that mean?" She answered without looking at him. "It means this wasn't the first prison." A new alarm sounded down the hall. A different one. Deeper, like a vault being unlocked. Rourke swallowed hard. "Detective, is it over?" She shook her head once. "No." Her phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. 3 words. "Open the door." She turned toward the exit. "Come on," she said. "If you thought this case was wild." She pushed open the hallway leading outside. "If you thought this case was wild, wait until you see the next one."